McDonald's sells roughly 2.5 billion hamburgers every single year. And yet, the man who turned it into a global empire once looked a room full of businessmen into the eye and said, "I'm not in the burger business. I'm in the real estate business." His name was Ray Kroc. And by the time the world understood what he meant, McDonald's didn't just serve fast food. It owned the land underneath it. Today, the company sits on a real estate portfolio worth more than most countries' GDP. This is the story of how a milkshake machine salesman named Sonneborn built a $200 billion empire, not by flipping patties, but by flipping the entire idea of what a restaurant company could be. It starts, like a lot of great American stories, with two brothers and a simple idea. In 1940, Richard and Maurice McDonald opened a small drive-in restaurant in San Bernardino, California. It did fine. But in 1948, they did something radical. They gutted the entire menu, fired the car hops, and redesigned the kitchen around a single obsession: speed. They called it the Speedee Service System. 15-cent hamburgers served in 30 seconds, made on what was essentially an assembly line for food. Customers walked up to a window, got their meal, and left. No waiters, no tipping, no confusion. It worked spectacularly. By the early 1950s, the McDonald brothers were clearing $100,000 a year, serious money for a burger stand in post-war America. Word spread. People drove from across the state just to see this strange new operation where food appeared almost instantly. The brothers started licensing the concept to a handful of franchisees, but they weren't empire builders. They were operators. They wanted a clean kitchen, not a corporate headquarters. Then, in 1954, a 52-year-old milkshake mixer salesman named Ray Kroc walked into their restaurant. He wasn't there to eat. He was there because the McDonald brothers had ordered 8 of his multi-mixer machines, enough to make 40 milkshakes simultaneously. Kroc had never seen a restaurant that needed that kind of volume. When he arrived and saw the lines out the door, the speed of the kitchen, the surgical precision of 2 men working a grill, something clicked in his brain that would change the food industry forever. Kroc didn't just want to sell the brothers more mixers, he wanted to franchise their system across the entire country. The brothers, comfortable with their life in San Bernardino, agreed to let him try. They struck a deal. Kroc could open new McDonald's locations, but the terms were brutal. He'd collect a 1.9% franchise fee from each restaurant's sales. Out of that, he owed the brothers 0.5%. That left Kroc with 1.4% of gross revenue. A razor-thin margin that, after expenses, meant he was barely breaking even. Here's where most business stories would end. A middleman scraping by on fractions of a percent, slowly opening restaurants and praying for volume. Kroc opened location after location throughout the late 1950s, and the restaurants were successful, but he was hemorrhaging money. The franchise fees couldn't cover his overhead. He had a growing empire of bustling restaurants and an office that couldn't make rent. The model as it stood was a trap. The restaurants printed money. The franchisor starved. So Kroc did what all great business minds do when the math doesn't work. He changed the math entirely. In 1956, Kroc brought on a financial advisor named Harry Sonneborn, and Sonneborn saw something Kroc hadn't. He looked at McDonald's not as a food company with a franchising problem, but as a real estate opportunity hiding inside a restaurant chain. The insight was deceptively simple. Instead of just licensing the McDonald's name and system to franchisees, Kroc's company would find the locations, sign the leases, or better yet, buy the land, and then sublease the property to the franchisee at a significant markup. The franchisee would pay not just a percentage of sales, but rent. And that rent would be the real revenue engine. Think about what this does. A franchise fee tied to sales fluctuates. Bad weather, slow weeks, recessions, all of it eats into the number. But rent is fixed. Rent is owed whether you sell 1,000 burgers or 10. It transforms the franchisor from a company hoping its partners succeed into a landlord who gets paid regardless. And when the franchisee does well, the lease includes percentage of sales escalators, so McDonald's earns even more. In 1956, Kroc incorporated the Franchise Realty Corporation, later folded into what we know today simply as McDonald's Corporation. This entity didn't make hamburgers. It acquired property. It negotiated leases with 20-year terms. It bought land in suburbs where highways were being built, near schools being planned, in towns that didn't fully exist yet. And every single franchise that opened on that land paid McDonald's to be there. Why the model was devastating. To understand why this was so powerful, you have to understand what it replaced. In a traditional franchise model, think early Burger King or Dairy Queen, the franchisor sold you the right to use the name, maybe some proprietary recipes, and then collected a small percentage of your sales. That's it. The franchisee found their own building, signed their own lease, and operated largely independently. The franchisor had influence, but not control. McDonald's flipped that power dynamic on its head. Because the company owned or controlled the property, it held absolute leverage over every franchisee. If an operator let quality slip, if they refused to adopt a new menu item, if they didn't maintain the bathrooms, McDonald's could simply decline to renew the lease. The franchisee didn't just risk losing a brand license. They risked losing the building they'd spent years pouring money into. That's not a partnership. That's a leash. And it's exactly why McDonald's achieved a level of consistency that no other fast food chain could match. Every McDonald's looked the same. Every Big Mac tasted the same. Every bathroom was at least tolerable, not because franchisees were naturally disciplined, but because the Rondad de Carce was the landlord was watching, and the landlord held the keys. Meanwhile, the financial math became almost absurdly favorable. McDonald's would buy land for, say, $100,000. Then it would lease that land to a franchisee at a rate that covered the mortgage and generated profit on top. As property values rose, and in post-war suburban America, they rose relentlessly, McDonald's sat on appreciating assets while collecting monthly rent checks. The company was getting richer from two directions at once: the operations above the ground and the dirt underneath it. Through the 1960s and 1970s, McDonald's expanded at a pace that bordered on surreal. Kroc and his team had essentially built a formula: identify a high-traffic location, acquire or lease the property, install a franchisee, collect rent plus royalties, repeat. Every new restaurant wasn't just a revenue source, it was a real estate acquisition. The balance sheet grew fatter with every golden arch that went up, and the locations weren't random. McDonald's invested heavily in site selection, developing proprietary models for traffic patterns, population density, highway access, and proximity to schools. While competitors were still relying on gut instinct and handshake deals, McDonald's was running what amounted to a real estate analytics operation decades before that term existed. They didn't just open restaurants, they secured territory. By the time Kroc bought out the McDonald brothers in 1961 for $2.7 million, a deal that still stung the brothers, who felt they'd been cut out of the fortune they'd invented. The company was already a property juggernaut, disguised as a restaurant chain. The brothers got their money, Kroc got the machine, and the machine kept building. Here's a number that makes the strategy concrete. By the mid-1970s, franchise fees and food operations accounted for a shrinking share of McDonald's profit. The majority of income was coming from rent. The burger business funded the real estate business, and the real estate business made the company untouchable. Even during recessions, even when consumer tastes shifted, even when competitors launched price wars, the land kept its value and the rent kept coming in. Fast forward to the present, and the numbers are staggering. McDonald's owns or holds long-term leases on approximately 36,000 restaurant locations worldwide. It operates in over 100 countries, The company's real estate portfolio alone is valued at well over $40 billion. And some analysts place the true figure much higher when accounting for prime urban locations in places like Tokyo, London, and Manhattan. Here's what most people miss. About 93% of McDonald's restaurants are operated by franchisees. McDonald's doesn't run them. It doesn't employ the workers behind the counter. It doesn't buy the beef or the buns. What it does is own the land, collect the rent, and enforce the standards. In any given year, more than half of the company's total revenue comes not from selling food, but from collecting rent and franchise fees, with rent being the dominant share. That's why McDonald's can survive almost anything. A health trend against processed food? Doesn't matter. The rent is still due. A competitor offers a cheaper burger. Irrelevant. The franchisee absorbs that pressure, not the parent company. A global pandemic shuts down dining rooms. McDonald's pivoted to drive-thrus faster than anyone, and the lease payments continued flowing. The company's stock has reflected this fortress-like stability. Over the past 2 decades, McDonald's has been one of the most consistent performers in the entire S&P 500, not because it makes the best food, but because its revenue is anchored to something far more reliable than consumer taste: land. So what's the real lesson here? It's not that real estate is a good investment. Everyone knows that. The lesson is about what a business actually is versus what it appears to be. McDonald's appears to be a fast food company. It smells like one, looks like one, advertises like one. But underneath the fryers and the drive-through speakers and the Happy Meal toys, it operates like a real estate investment trust with a hamburger-themed marketing department. The burgers are the storefront. The land is the vault. Ray Kroc understood something that most entrepreneurs never grasp. The product doesn't have to be the profit center. The product can be the bait that makes the real business model work. Sell hamburgers to attract franchisees. Attract franchisees to fill buildings that you own, and own enough buildings in enough places for long enough. And you don't just build a company, you build something that's almost impossible to destroy. The next time you drive past those golden arches, remember, you're not looking at a restaurant, you're looking at a landlord, one of the largest and most powerful landlords the world has ever known. And every single burger sold under that roof is just paying someone else's rent.